something went wrong. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. I think we're recording. Welcome back again for the third time to Inside the Pylon, a Midwest college football podcast. The whole feng shui of the show is now messed up because we've already done the introduction and then my internet stopped working. I don't know what happened, man. Good to see you again. How are you, Clinton?
I'm doing good, man. It's been a really good weekend. Pretty lackluster day of college football yesterday. Michigan, Indiana, good. Georgia, Ole Miss, good. Outside of that, kind of poo-poo the whole day. I'm not going to lie,
Georgia,
Ryan.
Ole Miss good?
It was good from the standpoint if you wanted Georgia to lose.
Yeah, but now we got a cluster of nonsense.
Well, I'm not going to lie. This is how the day went. I almost fell asleep during the Ohio State game.
It was a boring game.
I was so bored yesterday during all the games. I was very disappointed. But overall, good weekend. How are you, Ryan?
Well, better now that my internet is. I don't even know the internet stopped working. I'm not really sure what happened because the TV was still running and my phone was still refreshing, but Riverside, and I could not open anything else up on my web browser. So that was super weird. No, not bad. We finally finished the Christmas tree and I finally finished hanging molding, and now I have to rake leaves tomorrow. So I'm totally looking forward to that. Good times.
Raking leaves is fun. Just listen to a college football podcast and you'll get through it just fine.
I hate raking leaves. I did the front yard last weekend and it was so cumbersome that I only did half of it, and now they're all wet and soggy. So that's going to be an adventure. I think I might just run them over with a lawnmower.
That works.
That's the way to go. Maybe. We are. I think we're live on YouTube now. Probably.
Hopefully.
If you're watching live, you know where to find us at ITP CFB. Make sure you subscribe to that YouTube channel to catch us when we go live. Sunday, Monday, and Thursday evening, 9 p.m. Eastern time. If you are watching live on YouTube, make sure you're also subscribed to the podcast feed, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows. We are at Inside the Pylon, a Midwest college football podcast there. Also, make sure you're subscribed on the podcast feed so you can get notified as soon as these episode drops. And while you're there, go ahead, drop us a rating and a review if you feel so inclined. We would greatly appreciate it. Not only was it a bad weekend of Big Ten football, at least, Clinton, we were very wrong on our picks. Very wrong.
You are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
We both went
rough, man.
2-5.
Well, yeah, because we had all the same picks.
We had all the same picks. Misery loves company, and we both suck.
We stunk it up. Hey, we didn't stink it up. Our teams failed us that we picked. That's how it is.
That's definitely the reason. And it has nothing to do with the fact that we're both idiots. We are so dumb. We are very dumb, for real. Since there wasn't really a headliner game on the weekend here, I guess we'll kind of just start from the top like we did for the preview show.
With an upset to start the week that we didn't see coming.
Listen, the question last week was, is anyone going to be upset? All of the ranked teams won. It got touch and go a little bit for a couple teams there. But the big one was UCLA 20, Iowa 17. I think, Clinton, watching this game Friday night and seeing how it was going for Iowa, I probably should have stopped betting the other games that I had picked, because that probably was the clear indicator that it was going to be one of those weekends where we were going to be very wrong. I talked about this. I'm taking credit for this one a little bit, even though I did not pick UCLA. Talking about this one on Thursday last week, mentioning UCLA's run defense coming into the weekend. They were 11th in the country, and they were the story in this one, man. Iowa only ran for 80 yards on 31 carries. That is, count at 2.6 yards per carry. Caleb Johnson was effectively neutralized in this game.
Rolling.
He was not rolling. We cannot play the sound because he was not rolling. Brendan Sullivan hit a couple of big plays, but he got banged up, and we got to a point where Iowa was playing a quarterback who 2 weeks ago was a scout team linebacker.
Sounds about like last year when they had to blanket on his name and roll that young gentleman out after
Deacon Hill?
McNamara got. Yes, old Deacon. How's he doing at Utah Tech this year?
I think it's Utah State.
No, he's Utah Tech. It's a Tech, I promise you.
Oh, that's right. Spencer Petras is Utah State.
Another famed Iowa quarterback.
Oh boy, man!
Iowa legends everywhere.
Yes. Jackson Stratton, he did lead Iowa's touchdown drive in the second half that briefly tied this
Hey,
game. Prior to going out, Brendan Sullivan, 3 turnovers, 2 interceptions, and a fumble in this one. Ethan Garbers was good again, but the story of the game for UCLA was offensively, at least. TJ Harden had by far his best game of the season, 20 carries for 125 yards. Iowa could not stop the UCLA run in this one. And full marks to UCLA, man. We talked earlier in the year. They were playing hard against some pretty good teams. They were not getting the results, but we kind of looked at their schedule and thought, are these guys going to go 1-11? And here they are now 4-5. And I mean, there's an outside chance they could get bowl eligible here, Clinton. That's not exactly a murderer's row the last 3 weeks for them.
Nope. Yeah, thoroughly impressed. They had a 415 to 265 yard edge in total yards, and especially the team we didn't think would come ahead in running, 211 to 80. You already mentioned it. Garbers looked pretty good. He rallied after 2 interceptions in the first quarter. I believe there was a tweet out there. It might have been by our buddy Jeffrey the Greek that's saying, do either one of these teams want to win this game? Because it was just turnover central and failed execution. The Hawkeyes lost for only the 3rd time, Ryan, in 22 games in the month of November, dating all the way back to November 2019. Pretty crazy. Pretty impressive for a team that usually can't score points.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I went to bed, not going to lie. I was pretty tired. Had a busy day coming up the next day. I did not expect Caleb Johnson to be shut down like this. I know UCLA's run defense has been solid, but Johnson has been such a monster. I didn't think UCLA would be able to slow him down. So props to UCLA. I don't know how full the Rose Bowl was, but props to UCLA showing up in this game. Persistent, hard work pays off. You already brought up the comment that we made earlier in the year that UCLA's close. They're close. They're close. Can they get it done? And now they're getting it done. And what are they? You said you're 2 games away from bowl eligibility? 2, right?
Games.
Got 4 wins. So you got the game against USC. That game's looking more spicy as we go. You could get a USC Trojan team coming off a loss to the Nebraska Cornhuskers after this coming week. It's pretty impressive by UCLA. Iowa, I don't know what you take from this. You come off a 40-something point performance and you have a dud. Didn't they do that a few weeks ago? They put up 40-something against Northwestern and then had a dud against Michigan State. So the part about having a weaponized offense is you have to kind of be consistent. But the only consistent part to their offense this year has been Caleb Johnson, who didn't get to do anything in this game. So good job, Bruins, man. I'm impressed.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where when your offensive line is fine and you have a really good running back who it doesn't matter how well they're blocking for him, he's going to get yards after contact anyway. That can carry you. That can carry you. But when you're facing the good run defense and they focus on taking away the run and they make your questionable passing game actually have to carry its weight, that's kind of the result that we get here, man. And it's a fascinating conversation around this team because I know we were both pretty high on them coming into the year. And I think it was hard not to be given what they did last year, not being a functioning offense and all and still winning 10 games.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I did not have 6-4 after 10 games on my bingo card. I thought that over 8 was all but a guarantee given that what was on this schedule this year. And
now they got to earn it.
Now you got to earn it. You got a Maryland, you got a bye week followed by Maryland and Nebraska to end the year. And I mean, the way Iowa's been playing, depending on what team you get, they can easily win both of those games, but they can lose both of those games too, man. Last year, this team felt like a sure thing where you knew they weren't going to score, but they weren't going to give up any points. And their defense more often than not was going to be the best unit on the field, and it was going to carry them to a victory. And this year, there's just so much variability with this team. And that's got to be some whiplash for Iowa fans after the last couple of years of knowing, well, we're not going to score, but at least we're not going to give up any points either.
Absolutely. Been a little less consistent this year. I saw some Iowa fans tweeting both Friday night and Saturday morning to have Kirk Ferentz fired. They're ready to move on, and I'm intrigued by that. The guy has one season that's not as consistent as the rest. Listen, we said it in the preseason. All Iowa has to do is have an average offense, and they're a playoff team. What's happened when Iowa's had at least an average or above average offense? They've blown teams out of the water. The problem has been they haven't had the consistency to have that offense week to week. And in the weeks they don't, they lose. And it started with that Iowa State game, right? Like dominated the first half. Ryan just mentioned it. Where'd the defense go? Gave it up at the end of the game. Offense got stagnant. Really, the only week-to-week consistent piece for this team has been Caleb Johnson. And I know his stats against Ohio State and UCLA weren't great, but he had another touchdown in this game. I believe he now owns the Iowa single-season touchdown record after he scored that one. When your only piece is that one kid, it's hard to be consistent every week as an entire offense. They're still improved. I still think there's room for continued improvement. I kind of come back to the fact of just quarterback, right? Like Sullivan has been nice to put in there and have his legs, but you got to have a guy who can throw, and you got to have guys who can get open for them to throw too. I don't know if Luke Lachey got much action in this game. He's been out the past 2 games. So your big leading receiver from last year has not done anything really for you this year. So you got to find some other pieces to add. And I believe Caleb Johnson is draft eligible, and I would assume is going to go to the draft after this year. So you are not going to have him back next year.
I wonder. So Sullivan's junior. He should be back next year. I wonder how much just kind of this change in scheme is affecting just their offense overall and why there's so much variability. Because last year, it's just, you're 3 yards in a cloud of dust. We're going to run the ball up the middle and throw because we have to, not because we want to type of thing. So you can be a little bit more consistent with that, I guess. But another year in the system, and if you're going in and saying, hey, we saw enough from Sullivan this year to think that he's our guy. He gets a full off season of work in there because, he was a spring transfer, right?
Yes.
So full off season, full spring ball in the program with the same offensive coordinator, have a chance to build some chemistry with the receivers in the offensive line. And I wonder if that pays dividends next year. So
I don't think it'll matter when Devin Brown or Lincoln Kienholz is transferring to Iowa in the offseason and they're the new starting quarterback.
Why? I don't know why you would want Devin Brown.
I mean, it's Iowa. Why did you want Cade McNamara?
I mean, at least he led Michigan to a playoff, I guess, kind of, sort of.
Did he? He did the run game and the defense.
I mean, he was probably more a passenger than anything, but he was present for it.
He was present.
I'm tired of talking about Purdue, Clinton. Ohio State 45, Purdue 0. I feel bad for them. They got Penn State this week, and they're probably going to get
murdered again
by another top 10 team. It's just... they stink. I know you said you wanted to fall asleep during this game. I had this game on in the quad box just because Sam wanted to watch it, and I think she stopped watching it after the second quarter. She's like, this is stupid. And I did not really pay attention to this game all that much.
Nope. I have some few interesting pieces from this game because 45-0, even as a fan, didn't result in overly intriguing football for you. But if you watched the game at all in closeness, you noticed in the first quarter, game was a little closer than probably people were expecting. That's because Ohio State was rotating a lot, trying some different things out on offense, doing different things on defense. Tyleik Williams didn't play, rotated a ton of defensive linemen in this game. I believe even in the second and third quarter, JT and Sawyer did not play as much as they normally do. They were just getting a lot of the young guys reps, which is smart, right? We talked about how these potential national champion level teams are going to have to monitor snap counts and get these guys through a potential 16, 17 game season. The biggest takeaway for me, Ohio State finally used the Jim Knowles jack position in this game. They went to 3 down linemen, and they had a jack position between Mitchell Melton and CJ Hicks. It did not go well the couple times they did it against the run, which I think is okay, right? That's why you test it out in a game like this. Props to Maccabee and Reggie Love some for getting yards on those plays. My brother-in-law texted me. He's like, why are they trying it now? I'm like, would you want them to try this for the first time against Indiana and get this result? Like, absolutely, you want to try it against Purdue and Northwestern and see if it's even worth playing against Indiana. And if you work the kinks out, then hell yeah, it's worth it because you're going to generate more pressure. Receiver, they got a lot of different players in at wide receiver this week. I like seeing Carnell Tate getting work. Jeremiah Smith is now I believe he has the trifecta of yardage, receptions, and touchdowns in a single season freshman record for Ohio State. The kid just continues to dominate. Last piece, Howard's legs were impactful in this game. Ohio State continues to utilize his legs a little more, albeit we probably don't want to see it too much against Northwestern next week because we don't want to risk an injury. Outside of that, I'm sorry, Purdue. You were overmatched at every position. Maccabee was about your only highlight of the day. One big question, though, still to watch. Ryan, again, I don't know if you were paying as much of attention. Ohio State's defensive backs, Denzel Burke and Davison Igbinosun, are still a point of weakness in this defense. Burke got hit over the top. Davison Igbinosun with another holding penalty. The two corners worry me, especially when a potential rematch with Oregon looms. I don't know if Indiana has the higher skill set enough to challenge those two. They certainly have the size. They have some big receivers. But a potential rematch with Oregon looms if they can win out. And I think Ohio State could be in trouble again. So that's just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think I looked up at one point on the quad box and Igbinosun was water skiing the defensive or the receiver down the field. I'm like, oh, well, some things never change.
And he does make some really good plays. Here's another one. I forget who it was, but dear God, if we would teach college defensive backs to turn around and look at the ball, do you know how many interceptions these kids would have? Mm-hmm. Play the ball. Jesus, just turn your head around. Well, I think they put it right in your breadbasket. Just look at it.
If you talk about that subtle holding, that's kind of like one of those like dark arts of being a defensive back and having to be good at it and getting away with it. Because if you look at like Mike Mickens, it does a really good job of teaching this because Ben Morrison like clutch and grabs more than anyone I've ever seen. And he does not get called for PI all that much because he's really good at being subtle about it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't ride the guy down the field and expect to not get called.
Yep. Sometimes too, if you can keep it within the frame, right? Clearly, if you're not turning the guy, but if you can keep it within the frame, you might can get away with a little tug or two that just might be enough to keep you in the play to break up the ball. And the ref isn't going to see it because he's not in position to see it. But Jesus Christ, Davison Igbinosun, you can't hold his arm down. You can't turn his body when he's running down the field on a vertical. I'm like, my God, son.
Yeah, they will get you every single time.
You're going to get called, and you're not going to be an NFL cornerback doing that because you'll never be on the field because you're causing your team spot fouls every single time you do that.
Yep. So Ohio State now 8-1. They have Northwestern, another big noon game, Clinton. That seems to be the.
It's on BTN though. It's not on.
Oh shoot, you're right.
Fox. Fox is Colorado, Utah.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
A nice 9 a.m. kick, unless they're playing that later. No, I think it's a noon game.
I think it's a noon game.
Yeah,
that's crazy. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Have your breakfast at the football game, I guess.
Right.
Clinton, I did not have an Ethan Kaliak-Manis revenge game on my bingo card. Nope. It was so far off my radar. We did not even mention it on Thursday.
Nope, because we lost all hope. And Rutgers, we thought they were dead.
Rutgers 26, Minnesota 19. The big one in this was, I think, like 10:30-ish. Pete Thamel tweeted that Kyle Monangai would not be playing, and I bet again on Minnesota to cover, not realizing that I had already bet on them. So good for me. Got smoked on this game. I got smoked.
He's just a little bit away from another 1,000-yard season too, I believe.
Yeah, it sounds about right. I think he's
so
8. Hold on, I can tell you. I got the stats pulled up right
100 yards, maybe
931 yards right now.
So he's 69 away.
He is knocking on the door. That's nice. In his absence, though, however, Antoine Raymond goes 22 carries for 73 yards, and the aforementioned Kaliak-Manis 17 of 33, 240 yards, 3 touchdowns with 1 interception. The Rutgers receivers, man, in this one, they were
Demir Miller.
They were making some plays for him. You know, they got some Demir Miller. That was one. He had 5 catches, 58 yards, 2 scores. Ian Strong is a big, strong dude. No pun intended. 4 catches, 89 yards, and a score. And they were The Minnesota defensive backs were having a tough time containing them in this one. And also, Clinton, talking about the Rutgers defense, which we've both been out on for a while, they came back with a vengeance in this one. Minnesota could not run the ball at all in this game. 1.8 yards per carry, 19 carries, 35 yards as a team. Darius Taylor, 10 carries, 28 yards. And to top it off, Rutgers had 4 sacks, so including a safety in this one.
Mhm.
So just not a good day for the Minnesota offense at all in this game.
Yeah, I had noted here 18 yards of that 35 yards came on Darius Taylor's touchdown. So subtract that, and you have 17 yards for the remainder of your 18 carries.
Yeah. Well,
That's
also
pretty bad, man.
I mean, this is also, to be fair, it's also sack adjusted because Max Brosmer had a
Mhm.
28-yard run in this game, and he finished with -2 yards rushing on
Yeah.
7 carries.
Yep. I was gonna say he seemed like you texted me and you said Minnesota's offensive line sucks. And so looking back at it, he was under duress a lot of the game. Tyreem Powell kind of came up with a game-changing play. He caused the fumble with 8 minutes left that then led, in the next drive to a Calais McManus touchdown. I don't know, man. I was out on Rutgers. The defense was banged up. I read the same Pete Thamel thing that Monangai was out, and I'm like, this is even better that we locked up Minnesota.
Yep.
There's no way they're going to lose because the only person worth a crap at this point in the season on Rutgers offense is Monangai.
Mm-hmm.
And now, not knowing what it is, and Rutgers is what? They 5 wins now, 1 game away from bowl eligibility.
5-4. Yep.
I don't know. Like I envision Monangai is going to be a top running back in this class. Like depending on the injury, he might be done for the year. And that's not to like knock anybody, but if it's something that could prohibit a combine performance for him or hurt his draft stock on a team that is just going to go to the Cheez-It or Pop-Tart Bowl, he's going to opt out anyways. He's not going to do it.
No.
So that's a bummer because the Big Ten, we talked about it in the offseason and through this season, there are a lot of really good running backs, and I would love to watch Monangai some more. But totally surprised. I didn't see this coming. Props to Calais McManus in a revenge game. Good job, Rutgers. I mean, they break a 4-game losing streak and did it without Monangai. And then Minnesota ended a 4-game win streak, I believe, by losing this game. So Minnesota, though, you have to regroup on your bye week.
Yep.
Because Penn State's going to hammer Purdue. And they're going to come to you, and they're going to be pretty confident because they didn't really have anything looming to have a look-ahead, letdown look-ahead type deal because they end the season.
That's probably their best game.
So we've seen Minnesota at their peak. We've seen Minnesota essentially in their valley. Get your bye week, get your head right, get people healthy. You better learn how to protect Brosmer because Penn State is coming.
Yeah, man. If you're struggling to run the ball and protect your quarterback against Rutgers' banged up defense, I think their best pass rusher was out for this game too.
Mm-hmm.
I think Abdul Carter might kill someone.
Yep. And if Denai Sutton is back, do you know I know we'll get to the game, but did he play this week?
I did not. I watched literally 0 of that game.
I didn't either. It was on the cock, and I didn't want to watch it. So, and you were enjoying Notre Dame beat down Florida State. So
yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed that thoroughly. I can pull up the stats when we get to that. But yeah, man. So we went from looking at Minnesota as potentially, hey, they run the table. They're going to go 9-3. Maybe obviously the Penn State game was always going to be tough, but maybe a trendy upset pick in that game. You're coming in with momentum, and now after this, probably lose that game, and then you got to beat Wisconsin to avoid going 6-6 on the final weekend of the season. So disappointing performance from the Gophers. We'll see if they can rebound, not this week, but in 2 weeks against Penn State. If there was one big game this weekend, Clinton, it was probably this, and only because of how it ended up playing out. Indiana 20, Michigan 15. It is still the first time in Indiana football history they have won 10 games in a season. That is to be applauded. Do I have an applause thing? I got cheers in here somewhere. We're not going to find it. I don't really care. This was an interesting game, man, because it started off. Indiana got out to a sizable lead. They were up 17-3 in the at halftime, and it looked like they were just going to kind of run away with this one. But credit to Michigan's defense and their defensive coaching staff, they made some adjustments at halftime, and Indiana, Clinton, you and I combined to have more yards than Indiana did in the third quarter of this game.
Oh, God.
They had minus 6 yards in the third quarter. They could not move the ball. Even when they got the field goal at the end of the game, they were gifted the field position. Well, they weren't gifted the field position, but they had a really good punt return, which got them into the field goal position. I think that play was a 6-play, 16-yard drive.
Yep.
Clinton, that was their best drive of the second half. 1 play, interception. 5 plays, 14 yards, punt. 3 plays, minus 16 yards, punt. 6 plays, minus 4 yards, punt. 6 plays, 16 yards, field goal. 4 plays, 8 yards, end of game. That was the second half for Indiana. That was not good. So credit to Michigan for that one. But also, I mean, you have to give credit to the Indiana defense. You say what you want about Michigan's offense, but they held in there. They won this game for the Hoosiers in the second half, and it got dicey there. Michigan, I think it was about 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They scored a touchdown and could have tied the game with a 2-point conversion, but the defense stopped it, and then they did not capitulate. So credit to the IU defense for that one.
Yeah, they held Edwards and Mullings to 3 yards per carry on the game.
Okay, so hold on. Before you get too deep, did you see the Khalil Mullings discourse after this game?
I heard something about it, but...
So he had 10 carries for 30 yards. Early in the game, it was mostly Donovan Edwards and a little bit Benjamin Hall. I think most of Mullings' carries were in the second half. And someone asked Sharon more about it, and he's like, well, they were practicing better during the week. I'm like, bro, he's been your only good offensive player.
Wow.
Because I have some Indiana playoff takes that I want to save for tomorrow because that's what our show is going to be tomorrow. So I don't want to do it all today. Maybe we can have some, is Sharon Moore 6 feet in over his head discourse right now?
Is he fit to be a head coach?
Well, it was the second consecutive week that he challenged a play that was very clearly like the correct call on the field, like not even close. I think it was an orgy fumble where like it was like it was such a weird challenge that the announcers were like, is he challenging for targeting? Should we see if there's targeting? Oh, there's no targeting on this play.
I remember that.
Well, the ball's way out. What are they looking at? Like, what the hell are you doing? 2 weeks in a row, you've blown a timeout on an idiot challenge. And then he threw his staff under the bus. He's like, well, we got buzzed down that we should look at it. I'm like, who buzzed you? Fire them now because they're blind.
Well,
God damn, dude.
Just because they buzz you doesn't mean you have to do it.
Well, I mean, you'd like to think
You're
that
trusting
you can trust
them,
your
right?
video staff because you
Yes.
don't have the benefit of replay if it's not blasting on the Jumbotron in front of you. But oh my God, whoever.
My God, you're on the
so
field with
bad.
them, and I watched it, and it was pretty blatantly a fumble. It's not like it was close.
No.
You already bring up orgy. Again, Michigan, your orgy package is worthless.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't do anything but
No.
run. No one is fooled by this. What do you think is going to happen to you when Ohio State plays you? They're going to kill you unless you have something up your sleeve to throw the ball. Michigan was only able to generate.
They are degenerating.
3 red zone trips and only scored 1 TD. If you're going to pull an upset, you have to score touchdowns. That's how it happens against a really good offense. Michigan's defense, though, you gave them props, especially in the second half, held Indiana to just 246 yards overall. And the running backs only ran for 72 yards. And I believe, was it Ellison that got hurt in this game? And Lawton finished, or am I vice versa? One of the running backs got hurt.
Ellison, it was the same. Brandon Hillman killed 2 guys from Indiana in this game. He hit Ellison. He ended up coming back. I don't know if he got hurt again, but he briefly came out of the game. And then I want to say it was Miles Price got blown up too and left the game. I don't know if he ended up coming back.
Yep. So my biggest takeaway from this game, outside of Michigan's defense, is still really good, and this was without Will Johnson. Good Lord, I'm thinking ahead. My words, man. But Graham and Grant, again, we talked about how big of a challenge it would present to the Indiana offensive line. Wasn't as big of a deal in the first half, but when you have to play a 4-quarter game against one of your bigger boy opponents, it's a little bit different than playing 4 quarters against Maryland. Like, Michigan's going to punch you back on the D line for 4 quarters. They're not going to wilt against you after the second quarter.
Yep.
But Indiana survived, and I don't mean survived as in a bad way. I believe it's a survive in an impressive way because you could have folded. You could have lost against an inept Michigan offense, but a defense that shut you down, as Ryan already mentioned, for 2 quarters in the second half. Michigan had the momentum late. Indiana proved the toughness, and they were able to hang on and get the win and move to 10-0.
Yeah.
That's the type of game that could propel you forward, but that's also the type of game where people are probably going to try and sit and poke holes at you and tell you in 2 weeks when Ohio State plays you and they're way better than Michigan that you could be in trouble. But when you're clunkers, right? Maybe this is the Indiana clunker.
Well,
maybe it's not the fact that
it's definitely
they just had an off game. Maybe they had an off game or an off half because they were fine in the first half to an extent. I thought Rourke was going to hang 4 or 5 TDs on Michigan, and props to Michigan for the adjustments. They have 3 games left to go bowling?
They have 2 games left.
2 games. There are 5 wins. They got to win 1. It is Northwestern and Ohio State. So
better
win Northwestern's at Wrigley Field, right? Or is it home?
I believe it's at home.
Okay. Yep. So they should be able to get that one. But I don't know. Indiana, you get a bye week. If you got anybody dinged up, get them healthy because Ohio State is going to have your full attention. And they are not going to want to lose. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, maybe this is more of a tomorrow conversation, but it's kind of one of those things where like you're allowed to have a bad game. Like Indiana's beat the crap out of everyone they played this year. Like they weren't going to go the whole year beating everyone by 14 points. So like, okay, cool. You had a bad game. Everyone else has had a bad game. That's fine. Not worried about it. But I wonder how much. It's definitely not in the AP poll, right? So they went from 8 to 5 in the AP poll. They not only jumped over Georgia and Miami, who both lost, but they jumped Tennessee as well, who they were behind last week. So I don't know if that's like a brand bias thing. We're like, oh my God, they beat the Wing Helmet. They're suddenly very good. Like, that's fine. That's cool. But it's about time Indiana benefits from some brand bias after being 8th for some reason after last week's rankings. That was ridiculous. But it's also one of those things where I wonder, I'm very interested to see where they end up in the committee ranking, if that mirrors the AP poll or if, because like, you know, the counter argument, and this is not me saying this is what I believe, but the counter argument is, well, they haven't played anyone all year, and now they're finally playing a defense that can punch back, and they punched back, and they didn't have an answer for it. Like, that's the counter argument is, okay, well, they finally played someone and nearly lost. But, again, you're allowed to have a bad game. We'll talk about this more tomorrow because I have some, I don't know if they're playoff takes, but I'm very, like, for the second week in a row, I'm fascinated to see what the committee does with Indiana, especially with the potential clusterfuck that is coming up in the SEC if Georgia is to beat Tennessee this weekend and then Texas A&M ends up beating Texas and everyone's at 10-2. That would be not good for.
They're going to argue to get 6 SEC teams in.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like there's going to be some teams that should not be getting left out of the playoff that are going to end up getting screwed because the SEC.
An 11-1 Indiana.
We can't leave an SEC team out at 10-2.
Listen,
they're gonna put Missouri in.
And
it drew Missouri. Eli Drinkowitz thinks they're still alive.
I did say that I thought Iowa would get left out for Ole Miss, and the generic idea of a Big Ten team who wasn't on the radar to start the year gets left out for an SEC team is very much alive. And I think that team's Indiana unless they beat Ohio State.
Yeah, so we'll talk about this more tomorrow because, again, I want to talk the scenarios through with you, and I don't want to do that tonight because otherwise we're not going to have a show tomorrow. Speaking of playoff teams, Oregon 39, Maryland 18. This was kind of a weird game where it was kind of I don't even want to call it back and forth, but it felt like Oregon was going to pull away, and then Maryland kept kind of scoring to keep it close and cover the spread just to annoy me. But I don't think that this one was really any in doubt. Just kind of the theme for a couple of these teams this week, last week, next week, kind of going forward is you're playing crappy teams. You're going to beat the snot out of them. Just get out of the game healthy. And Oregon did not do that in this one. Jordan James left the game. I don't remember exactly when he left the game, but he only had 7 carries for 29 yards in this one. And they were talking I kept kind of flipping back sound between this and the Notre Dame game, and they were talking, oh yeah, we haven't seen Jordan James here in a while. He still had his helmet on and his pads on the sideline, so it's not like he was wrapped up or anything like that. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on over the next couple weeks, because I mean, Noah Whittington's getting better. He is still not the same running back as Jordan James is. He had 13 carries for 77 yards in this one. I think you said Holden got hurt too
early in the game, but he came back.
Okay.
But if it was something to take you out of a game, then clearly something is sore and there was an ailment. So we'll see. Good news for Oregon, though. Jordan Birch was back and seemed fine. So, I looked at this. I want to start with Maryland. Kept the game decently close. You started off early with a fumble from Edwards that led to an Oregon touchdown. But when I flipped this game on, Maryland had driven right down the field. The problem was they had kicked field goal. Again, what did we just say about Michigan? If you're going to go to any big game, but especially on the road, if you're going to win, you got to score touchdowns. And I think there were a few that in this game that Edwards just couldn't connect. Props to the Oregon defense. But when you're just off, when your guy's open, you got to be able to put the ball on the money to get the touchdown. Edwards also had 2 bad interceptions later in the game, second half, giving Oregon short fields. Props to Maryland's defense. The one time they held him to a field goal, which kept them alive. But Maryland only had 83 yards rushing, and 34 of those went to Hemby. They averaged 2.7 as a team. I believe Oregon ran for $188, maybe. 188 in this game.
180.
Oh, I see. I was close. Oregon did not allow a single sack in this game, so the offensive line continues to be a positive for them. They didn't need a lot in the pass game. I think Gabriel was 138 for the game, and
183.
183. See, there's the 180s. So again, you already mentioned it. Jordan James is a concern. They're going to need him moving forward. Props to Dylan Gabriel, though. He broke the NCAA total touchdown record. The record-breaking TD was caught by an offensive lineman by the name of Janoris Wilson, who Gabriel gave the game ball after the end of the game. But now the record's 179. He broke Case Keenum's old record of 178. So congratulations to Dylan Gabriel. I talked to Dale just briefly about this. Our guy Dale from the Athlon. The Ducks got to clean up a little bit before they head to Wisconsin. Now listen, if Locke is still starting, we know he's going to gift them an interception.
Likely.
Or 2. But on the off chance that he does not, and they play a clean game, and Oregon comes out and starts slow offensively, that was 1 point in Dan Lanning's post-game press conference, or Oregon has another 12 penalties for 95 yards, but on the road this time, the Ducks might be in a little bit of trouble in Madison, Wisconsin. I don't know. Do we have a time for that game yet? Are we a night game?
Oh,
God, that needs to be 7:30 NBC.
Wait. 7:30 NBC.
Let's go, baby. So, not only are you going to Wisconsin for the first time, you're going there for a night game. It's going to be a crazy atmosphere. An upset-minded Wisconsin who is not bowl eligible yet.
That is
who
correct.
Needs to get bowl eligible. Mm-hmm. I think Oregon wins. We'll see what the line is as we go through the week. But
14.5 right now, Clinton.
All right. They got to clean it up. You come out and start slow, or you have 12 penalties for 95 yards against a team in the playoffs, and you will lose. They're not going to win that game. So just clean it up a little bit, Ducks. Other than that, I don't have anything to complain about. You were fun to watch. Love the jerseys. Love the combo. Gabriel looks good. Defense looks good. You're where you need to be. Just clean up the penalties.
Yeah, man. If you're at this point in the season, if your clunkers are a 21-point win, then that's
pretty good, right?
Love that for you.
Yep. Not too many quarterbacks are going to give to you when you play really good ones in the playoff. 2 interceptions on their own side of the field, though.
True.
So
that is true.
You're not going to get that many breaks. The one he literally threw right to the Oregon defender. It wasn't as bad as a Locke on the Penn State game, but he pretty much threw it right to the Oregon defender.
Speaking of clunkers, Clinton, if I had told you that prior to Saturday, Florida State's largest margin of defeat this season was 26 points, would you have believed that?
Their largest margin? Yeah.
Their largest margin
of
defeat.
I've kept a small eye on Florida State to know that they're losing, but they're not getting annihilated.
Well, that is no longer the case because Notre Dame beat the fucking shit out of them. 52-3. Just a complete and absolute domination in the second half. The first half, they were running the NIU game plan on offense. I don't know what the hell they were doing. Riley Leonard was not very sharp in this game. He was 50% passer, 14 of 27. Couple of drops mixed in there. There's a couple drops. Not great. He had a couple balls batted at the line. But 215 yards. He can still run the ball very well. He's quite athletic. And Florida State, I don't know what happened to them. Like, somebody needs to write like a dissertation on the last like 16 months of Florida State football and how it went from what it was last year to the complete ineptitude it is this year. Like, I don't think that I've ever seen quarterback play as bad as I saw in this one from Florida State. Like, both guys, Brock Glenn, like this is the quintessential example of you, the idiot message board fan who's watching the senior quarterback stink and says, put in the young guys. It can't get that much worse. Yes, it can. Yes, it can. It can always get worse.
It doesn't make it fun to watch as a fan either.
Brock Glenn, 5 of 18 for 51 yards. That is 2.8 yards per attempt. He had 2 interceptions, including a pick 6 to a former walk-on safety thrown in the fourth quarter. And Luke Kromenhoek, 5 of 8, 37 yards. Not a whole lot better. Not a whole lot better, man. I don't really have any takeaways from this game, Clinton, because Florida State stinks, and I don't think you can extrapolate all that much from it. However, it is to be noted, if we are doing this stupid resume comparison thing, that Notre Dame has beaten Florida State by more points than Miami and SMU did combined. So take that, Hurricanes and Mustangs. J'accuse!
My breaking news that we have entering the show today,
Clinton, why do you gotta tell me?
Well, I'm giving you time now. I don't really have. It's not immediately breaking.
Oh, what, bro? Come on, breaking news.
Play the sound.
Well, I'm trying to find the damn sound. I can never find.
Oh my gosh!
Well, because I don't remember the. I don't remember when I put these things in. They don't organize alphabetically. They just go in chronologically, and therefore,
this just in, like 1 hour ago, Mike Norvell has fired his OC, DC, and wide receivers coach, as if that's going to make it any better.
Well, that's kind of one of the that's like the 2016 Brian Kelly, after they went 4-8, where the athletic director told him, you're either firing pretty much everyone or we're firing you, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they can actually fire Mike Norvell because I don't think they can afford
too much buyout.
Don't think they can afford that buyout.
They will when Deion Sanders wants to come in there and coach. If Colorado wins the Big 12.
We could be talking about playoff head coach Deion Sanders the way they're playing.
I can't wait till we start discussing that. Well, anyways, though, I saw an interesting tweet.
Okay.
And I want your opinion on this.
Oh,
which was more likely the fluke? Florida State season last year or Florida State season this year?
Ooh, I mean, if you look at like the entire Mike Norvell era at Florida State, you'd think it'd have to be last year, right?
I think it very well could be. I'll give you the point that
years.
Yeah, I'll give you the point. Like, this year is exponentially bad, right? Like, you clearly swung and missed in the portal.
Mm-hmm.
And you went to the portal because you knew what was behind Jordan Travis last year wasn't going to get you anywhere.
Well, no, we
That's
saw
why you went to the portal.
How the hell did they beat Louisville in that ACC title game last
year? Defense, Ryan. That's how
That's
defense.
True. That's true. They still had
defense. They stifled them.
Keon Coleman was
yes.
Too.
But I think, to an extent, I think last year might have been more of the fluke. I think you had the right scenario. And what did we talk about preseason? The transfer portal. If you swing big in the portal, you may hit some years. And we talked about, I think when we did one of our preseason top 10s or whatever, how Florida State swung pretty hard again. And they swung and missed.
Well, so the issue with being a team that builds through the portal is it's like this mercenary mentality where you're bringing in guys for 1 year who are just there to make some money and maybe improve their draft stock and then get the hell out. They have no vested interest in your program. Whereas if you're a team like Ohio State or Georgia or Notre Dame and you're building the bulk of your roster with guys that you recruited through high school that you sold for, 2.5, 3 years of that process, this is why you want to come here. This is what we can do for you both on and off the field.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are the guys that set your culture, that make sure that, hey, we're not slacking, that we're always pulling in the same direction. And we care what happens on the field because we've invested so much time and effort in this. And you're pulling 14, 13, 42, whatever guys out of the portal, just saying, hey, come help us win a football game. Well, then adversity strikes and you go 0-2 and they're like, yeah, well, I made my $300,000 and I'm driving in my Dodge Ram souped up pickup truck. So I don't really give a shit what happens the rest of this year because I'm on until next year anyway.
You're Indiana and Kurt Signetti.
What though? You think so? Those are guys. He pulled a lot of guys who came to JMU with him who knew. And I think like this is actually interesting that you bring this up now, because I mean it's fascinating what Deion's doing too, right? Because he did the whole roster reset thing, and they're good. And I mean maybe they're good because they have a really good quarterback and arguably the best player in college football, but they've gotten better as the season went along. Like they have a somewhat functional offensive line and a really good defense now.
Is some of it though, given how good the Pac-12 was last year and it being Deion's first year, but they're in a weaker conference this year?
Yeah, that's
as
true.
far as like peak talent.
That's true.
Like, what would this Colorado team be if the Pac-12 were to run it back, or we took this Colorado team and stuck it in the Pac-12 from last year? Like, I don't think they'd be as bad. Maybe a bowl eligible 6-win team.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But I don't know if they'd be at the top of the conference. I'm not sold on the Big 12 right now. Their best team is BYU, who almost lost to a Utah team that has no offense. They're like the Michigan of the Big 12. They play defense and can't do anything on offense.
They're 2022 TCU, where they just keep winning, and you have no idea how they keep winning, and the second that they play a team with a pulse.
I'm sorry, I meant Utah is the Michigan version of the Big 12.
Yes.
No offense and really good defense.
Decent defense.
Except they have a good coach.
Yeah.
And I'm not sold on Sharon Moore yet. But anyways, Ryan, my last piece for the Notre Dame game was just obviously outside of the NIU game. Do you think the Notre Dame slow starts are going to bite them again and cost them a game, especially when we get to the playoffs?
I mean, it's like clockwork. Because you texted me something about this, and I texted you back. It is literally clockwork that they give up. They let the opposing team drive the field on the opening drive on defense when they're on defense. It's every single game it happens. And I don't know if that's just like and it's been like 2-3 years running under Al Golden. It's just first drive, they run through the other team runs through the entire script. And then after that, they don't give up anything else. And that happened in this game too. Like, I think Florida State had like 75 yards on their first drive, 75-yard field goal drive. Clinton, do you want to guess how many yards Florida State finished with total?
Total offensive yards.
208. They had 130 yards the rest of the game after that first drive.
Yeah, I was going to say probably around 200.
I don't know if that's just like hey, we're going to play bend, don't break defense and make you run through your entire script and kind of see what your game plan is for the day. And then we're going to adjust and stop it, which is fine. Like if you make the other team go 10, 12 plays and you hold them to a field goal, whatever, I can see the kind of the utility in that. But the issue is when you're playing a really good offense who busts a big play on you and all of a sudden, our best laid plans, and they just scored a 45-yard touchdown drive because we busted a coverage. And I don't know that Notre Dame's offense is it's better, definitely better. Didn't look that way in the first half, but I don't know that Notre Dame's offense is at a point where they can do a track meet against a better offense that they would play. I saw God, I don't remember who tweeted it out. It was his projected playoff bracket. He had Notre Dame as an 11 seed playing BYU
Brad
in the
Crawford.
first round. Yep, playing BYU in the first round. I'm like, oh, well, that's a team that they can definitely just kind of go around and screw around in the first quarter and still probably beat them by 14 points. Maybe, I don't know. There's weird stuff happens in Provo, but it's hard to argue because they're like top 5 in every major statistical defensive category. So something clearly working. I mean, I get it's Florida State.
Michigan showed the path, man. If you've got an elite enough defense, you just need to make the right plays on offense.
Yes.
To win.
I mean, they have big play potential with what Riley Leonard can do as a thrower and a runner. I mean, he's not the most accurate passer. He missed a couple of gimme passes in this game. I wouldn't call them gimme passes, but a couple of open passes in this game. Jaden Greathouse had his best game of the season. Been kind of waiting for him to break out for a minute. He had 5 catches, like 66 yards or something like that. Janarian Price breaks a big, long touchdown run, and Jeremiah Love had a terrible game in this one. He had like 9 carries for 19 yards. That was kind of weird.
Ouch.
Yeah, not a great game for him. And then on the injury,
have your clunker now, not when it matters.
well, yeah, that's true. I mean, he still scored a touchdown. He scored a touchdown in every game this year. But the big one for Notre Dame in this one is All-American defensive tackle Howard Cross left the game. I think the second quarter, they called it an ankle sprain. He was heavily taped up.
I saw that.
He did not go back in the game. It didn't sound super serious. They kind of asked Marcus Freeman after the game. He was like, well, by the time I thought about asking to see if he'd be good to go, we were already up by so much. So I'm like, we're not even going to bother.
Didn't need to put him in.
That's one to track because Notre Dame cannot afford another defensive injury, and Howard Cross is probably their best player. So,
I mean, if anything, you don't even really need him to play him until you play USC.
No,
and not that USC is some peak challenge, right? But you're going to get a new piece with Jaden Maeva in.
No, you definitely want him against USC because they never play well in LA. Notre Dame never plays well in LA, regardless of how good USC is.
That may be USC trying to get a bowl game.
Yep.
That may just be USC trying to ruin Notre Dame's season.
Yep.
So I don't even think you put him out there. Maybe if he's healthy enough, you give him a little bit of work, right? But
sure,
not much. Not much.
And the good news for Notre Dame is even without Howard Cross, they still had 8 sacks in this game. And I mean, a lot of that was just because Florida State's defensive line is terrible. Yeah, there were like a couple of them were just straight up like bull rushes, and the offensive lineman fell. It was wild. Bad football team. Kind of to finish up here, the one result of the weekend that I did not see coming. Penn State 35, Washington 6. Penn State, a total evisceration in this game. Dominating.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ryan. I just had to call the Humane Society because the Huskies were just beaten down in this game.
Christ.
Absolutely beat those dogs.
I'm like, why are you picking up your phone right now? Are you taking a call in the middle of the podcast?
Beaten down.
Jesus Christ.
That was bad. Oh my gosh.
They got smoked.
I didn't watch any of this because it was on the cock, but I was keeping track of stats. I'm like, my God, I need Jonah Coleman to get some points, and he didn't get me enough, and I lost in college fantasy. However, I am locked into the college playoffs. It does not matter. But Washington, Penn State threw out some commands of sit and lay down.
Oh my gosh.
And you listened because you got buried. It was the Tyler Warren show. 2 TDs rushing, 8 catches, 75 yards. He also attempted 2 passes. You know, again, just to knock on Washington more, their run defense must have stayed home because Penn State ran for 266 yards, averaged 6.7 yards per carry as a team. Penn State defense, 5 sacks, 9 TFLs. Will Rogers was benched in this one, Ryan. He was benched in the third quarter for Damon Williams. They talked to Fish post-game. It sounds like they are leaning towards Rogers starting on Friday's game against UCLA. I think a part of it was, let's throw Damon Williams out there and just see if anything sticks. Can we make a change to make some type of impact in this game?
Kind of the we just need a spark type of thing.
Yeah, and didn't happen for him. I think the biggest concern here for Penn State, this is really my biggest takeaway, and we talked about it pre-show, Singleton out for the game. He'd housed an opening third quarter kickoff that was called back, and then he was not seen on the sidelines after. So clearly something has continued to linger with Nick Singleton, or hopefully we have not made worse or have a new injury. But that's a key piece for Penn State, right? They need Allen and Singleton to be the dynamic pieces for this offense, because we saw when they played an actual defense, they have nothing out wide to save them. They're going to need Allen. They're going to need Singleton. They're going to need Prabula, and they're going to need Aller, and of course, Tyler Warren. But they need as much of the backfield playmakers as they can get, because they don't have game changers at wide receiver. I'm not saying a guy can't step up and have one game, but if you're going to try to rely on them to get you through the playoffs to a national championship, that's not going to happen. So just an absolute throttling of Washington by Penn State. Washington, for the third time this year, is now lost when traveling cross country and looking pretty underwhelming. So,
good way to phrase it.
That's all I got for this game. There wasn't much to it.
Yeah, it was. I agree with that. I lost my train of thought. That's kind of how I feel about that game. No, I was because I had normally the last couple weeks I've been quad boxing when Notre Dame is on. I'm like, I'm just gonna put it on the big screen. So I pull up the quad box on my iPad, so I couldn't watch the Peacock. And by the time I thought about, I may pull this game up and see what's happening. I think I saw on Twitter. It might have been Roar Lions Roar. They're like, I'm having fun. I pulled up the box score. I'm like, oh, I guess I will not be watching this game.
Yeah. No sense in wasting your time.
It was like 28-3 at that point. So I'm like, not going to bother with it.
Yep.
Clinton, would you like to finish up with some dudes?
Let's do some dudes.
Hey,
we hit the music on time.
Well, I planned ahead that time. I have using the good brain there. Riley Mills. Well, I'm going to go with the two Notre Dame defensive tackles in this one. So Howard Cross goes down. Riley Mills has 3 sacks. Donovan Heinisch replacing Howard Cross has 2 sacks. 5 of the 8 sacks Notre Dame had in this game. Go defense. Woo.
You already mentioned this guy, TJ Harden, 20 carries, 125 yards, no touchdown, but I believe this was his first 100-yard game of the year.
Yep.
And it was a big one to help carry UCLA to an upset over the Iowa Hawkeyes.
I'm not very good at math, Clinton. This much has been adjudicated ad nauseum on this podcast, but I do believe that was like a third of his season yards total in the game.
That he had. This is a good running back too. This is a guy, another name.
He had a good year last year.
Sleeping on coming into this season.
He had 830 yards and 8 touchdowns last year.
Yeah.
It's that Chip Kelly offense for you. Shout out Ethan Kaliakmanis, the revenge spot. Not a fantastic completion percent. We touched on that. 17 of 33, 240 yards, 3 touchdowns, though, in the interception.
3 tutties. I believe that's a season high for him, right? 3 tutties.
Do believe that is correct.
Yeah. Yep. My next dude of the week. If we did this every week, I feel like I'd be saying the same name. Jeremiah Smith, 6 catches, 87 yards, 1 TD. But the reason I wanted to further include this is he now has the trifecta, and I believe, as I said earlier, it is receptions, yards, and touchdowns. Freshman record for Ohio State, and he is also Ohio State's leading receiver to this point. So great things ahead for this young man. Ohio State, hope you got your NIL bankroll ready after the offseason, because Miami Hurricanes will be on line 1, ready to offer about $5 to $6 million to get him to come back.
Dude, that'd be insane if he just was like, peace out, I'm going home.
He won't do that as long as Brian Hartline's there, but
no, but I don't know why you would. I don't know why you would leave Ohio State as a wide receiver. I mean, I guess you're Jameson Williams, but that's neither here nor there. Abdul Carter, 2 sacks, 4 tackles for a loss. He continues to be a dominant force. So
I was a loser. I went all offense.
Boo!
Jalen Milroe. This isn't even Big Ten. I bitched out.
Yeah, you stop that.
Jalen Milroe, 109 yards passing, but 12 carries, 185 yards, 4 touchdowns on the ground. Do you remember the short little clip from years ago with Mike Tyson in the end of the boxing match? My back is broken. It's spinal. That's what he did to LSU.
No idea what you're talking about.
You got to watch the clip. It's great. He broke LSU's back. He broke their will. He beat their ass on his own. Props to Jalen Milroe. Alabama is still alive. And the reason, Ryan, I incorporated that as a nice segue into tomorrow's episode. We'll see if Alabama, where they climb into the playoff rankings, and are they ahead of Indiana after
Clinton,
their big
you
win?
just wanted to talk about Jalen Milroe because you had to talk about LSU on this podcast again.
That was unintentional. I didn't even think of that. But hot damn, here we are. Oh, gosh.
That's what we do.
Here's more of a bold prediction for you.
Big Ten and LSU football.
Bama will not jump Indiana, but Bama will jump Notre Dame.
I mean, I could see it.
And BYU.
I could see it. I don't know, man.
Can't jump Tennessee because Tennessee's only got 1 loss and they have the head-to-head. But
well, I'm fascinated to see if they mirror the AP poll again because they did not jump them in the AP poll.
Have some originality.
Well, they did not last week. They literally copied. They looked at the homework and they changed.
They did copy and paste.
Yeah, no, they changed Ohio State and Georgia. They did the don't make it look exactly the same so the teacher doesn't think we're cheating.
So you don't fail for cheating. Plagiarism.
I'm just happy for LSU fans who are realizing that Brian Kelly can't win a big game. It only took you 3 years to get there.
Well, in the SEC, you live with a lot of big games, so that's going to be rough.
This is true. Another 3-loss season for Big Game Brian. We'll be back tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern again. We intentionally avoided any sort of playoff discourse this evening because that is going to be the entire show for tomorrow. We will redo our. Are we going to do a top 15 again? Do we want to do?
Let's do it. Make it every Monday. Might as well.
Redo our top 15s. Talk about movers up, down. No, not a lot of that in the Big Ten this weekend, but there was a big upset. Our national nightmare is over. We don't have to talk about an undefeated Miami anymore. Good for us. Not so good for us. The SEC is very quickly approaching the Armageddon scenario that we've kind of alluded to a couple times on this podcast. Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about that tomorrow. Thanks, everyone, once again, for tuning in. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel at ITPCFB and the podcast feeds, Apple, Spotify, wherever, Inside the Pylon, a Midwest College Football podcast. There, we will see y'all tomorrow night.
See you. All right.
I think I had brain worms.
Now I got to work on my top 15 again.